This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Welcome to the Ghee Spot Podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us for conversations around sex, spirit, and all things self-care. All things self-care. All things self-care.
This is a journey into sound.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
You are a Ghee Spot Podcast with Katie Silcox.
Hey, my loves, welcome to the Ghee Spot. It's cold, it's January, what the heck? Is anyone else starting to be over it? I'm not yet. I'm loving this winter and really relishing in all the pleasure of it, and we're going to talk about that today. Today's podcast is going to be a juicy good one. So they're all juicy and good, but this one is especially juicified. So make sure you hang around. But first, a word from our new sponsor. Guess who? We love them. We love Banyan Botanicals. Banyan is an amazing company. They really do try to work with sustainable herbs, which is super important when we talk about preventative medicine. And today I want to talk a little bit about their Breast Balm. Speaking of juicy, we do a whole module lecture on the incredible magic and importance of breast care. And one of the things that we talk about in Ayurveda school is how to do and why you should want to do a breast massage. Banyan has a great breast balm. I use it every single freaking day. It's like a non-negotiable. I don't always massage my whole body every day, but I'm going to do the breasts. So Banyan has an amazing one. It has all of the important Ayurvedic herbs in it. And so support a great company while you're supporting your breasts. And guess what? You can save 15% on Breast Care Balm by visiting our little hyperlink in the show notes. Check it out. As always, we are also sponsored by Ahara Ghee, the I Love Ghee company par excellence. Ahara Rasa means the essence of food in Sanskrit, and it speaks to the subtle energies that our body can extract from food rather than the apple or whatever it is you're eating, which in essence is discarded. Ghee exemplifies the Ahara Rasa because it's the most subtle and complete distillation of the cow's life-giving milk, and it holds incredible, according to ancient Ayurvedic medicine, incredible life-giving properties, medicinal properties. We believe in this ghee, and we want you guys to make sure you get the great discount links as usual in our show notes. So with that, on to the show. Okay, my loves, we are talking about big buzz around this whole idea of pleasure as activism, pleasure as vitally important for women's hormones, pleasure as a healing pathway out of trauma, pleasure as a spiritual journey, pleasure. Oh, my loves. Okay, so much I want to hold here and say here. I just came from an incredible weekend with my nature mentor, and we did a manifestation event, and it was just so incredible. And one of the things we were encouraged to do is, through a lot of writing inquiry, come up with the one word that you want 2020 to be about. And mine was pleasure. And pleasure has been such an important part of my healing journey, and continues to be. So what I really feel called to share with my community is the subtlety of pleasure. So there's a lot of hype around pleasure, and my concern is that there isn't enough emphasis on the importance of subtlety. Here's why. I am a pleasure junkie. If it weren't for yoga and Ayurveda, you guys, like, it makes me cry. Like, I don't even know where I would be. I don't know who I would be. I don't even know if I'd be here, to be quite honest. My own personal journey with being incredibly sensitive and dealing with the energies that I've dealt with in my personal journey, if it weren't for yoga and Ayurveda, I don't know. I don't even want to think about that. And I don't have to, because the karma is that I was able to discover this incredible path. And the path is so much bigger than what we think of as yoga and Ayurveda. It's a path of universal truth. And that, to me, is what truly Ayurveda and yoga are. Right? And so one of the things that's so important from the Tantrik yoga and from the Ayurveda perspective is this idea of the incredible importance of the five senses. And the whole reason that you cultivate your awareness in meditation from a Tantric perspective, the entire reason that you cultivate your awareness from an Ayurvedic perspective, is so that you can tune your instrument to be able to pick up on, notice, appreciate, and experience the portal of ever more subtle pleasure. So in our world, we are encouraged to lean into overt pleasure. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but this is not exactly what Ayurveda has recommended. We have these three gunas, right? The Rajas guna is this guna of passion. And why I bring that up is I am a very Rajasic person by nature. You guys that listen, and some of you are in Ayurveda school, know this. I'm a passionate, fiery gal. I bring the fire medicine, and I also bring the water medicine and the air medicine, as we all can, but I definitely came into this life with fire and with water. And so when you have a very strong fire and a very strong water, you're usually quite popular because you're fiery and fun and, charismatic and funny and all these things that we associate with charismatics and fiery people. And water is all about emotion and sexuality and sensuality. And so if you're out there listening and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm definitely that, those people tend to have a propensity, is the word I'll use, for addiction. And we won't go into the why of addiction, because any dosha, any guna can become addicted, and they'll usually become addicted in different ways. But this propensity to get locked or ensnared in the overt pleasures, and it manifests as, well, all the things it can manifest as, right? An addiction to, and of course I'm not speaking personally now, just generally, an addiction to alcohol, an addiction to food, an addiction to stimulants, drugs, an addiction to pornography, addiction, right? This is the way that we are on the in the ensnarement of overt forms of very temporary pleasure. And it can often be a part of our journey to need to go to that place in order to know that it doesn't bring really true happiness. So what I want to introduce today, and what's been really powerful for me as a very passionate Rajasic, I would even say intergenerationally speaking, someone who carries the lineage karma of addiction. What's been really helpful, and what continues to be really helpful for me, and tears come to my eyes as I say this, is the beauty of being able to experience subtle pleasure. And guess what? It's always available. The alcohol is not always available. The overindulgence in sweets is not always available. The, pornography, the shopping, even if you did it all the time, it's just not always there. You have to go seeking for it. And there are dire consequences. Subtle pleasure is always available. And guess what, loves? No side effects. Oh, wait. yes, there are side effects, and the side effects are always positive. And the side effect, I would even go as far to say, as a tantric woman, are these subtle pleasures or portals into revelation, into divinity, into clarity, sattva, into understanding, into peace, into the incredible experience of gratitude that we're on this planet that is consistently sending us messages of love and pleasure. So I want to talk a little bit more about that today and give you some inquiries that may help you tune to your own subtle pleasure. So think of pleasure on a scale from 1 to 10. Think in your life of the things that you really like on a scale of 1 to 10. And I think by doing this, we can really get away from this idea of, here are the things that are good for me, here are the things that are bad for me. Let's let go of that continuum that isn't going to be helpful for today. Like, these are good pleasures and these are bad pleasures. Let's go ahead and just let that go. Because we're not going to do the judging. Let's just say things exist on a spectrum of 1 to 10. 1 being the most subtle pleasure that you could ever experience, and 10 being the most overt, obvious pleasure you could ever experience. Think of this. Now, to give you an example, and you can pause this podcast and maybe take a little notes for yourself, but like a 10 for me would be like, let's see, multiple orgasms, chocolate. The other night I had a thin crusted extra cheese pizza. Like, that's a 10, right? Oh my God. Anything with cheese and salt and oil, that for me, that's going to be a 10, right? Like trance dancing to really great music at the capacity that my body has for cardiovascular, that's going to be a pleasure of like a 9, an 8, right? And so I'm not going to walk through every one of those with you guys, but what I do want you to do is consider it for yourself, and it's going to be different than mine. What pleasures are a 10? What pleasures are a 9, an 8, a 7, and go through that scale. And you don't have to go through each number. What would be like a 3? What would be a 4? What would be a 2? What would be a 1? And to really think about where you derive your pleasure from. And for modern Westerners, our pleasures tend to really lean towards the excessive end of the scale. I remember a friend of mine saying, I drink so much, black coffee that like a black tea, I don't even notice it, right? And maybe those of us who've experienced forms of sexual pleasure that, and again, no good, no bad here, but if you're using a vibrator all the time, you know it desensitizes the clitoris. That's okay. It's just different, right? Whereas if you've never used that, there may be more sensitivity. Many of us in the modern Western world live skewed so fully towards the other end of the spectrum, the 10 side, that it can be harder for us to feel, notice. Our systems just aren't tuned to pick up on, they're not primed for noticing subtle pleasure. Whereas if you let go of some of those overt pleasures just for a time, right, you may begin to tune to the more subtle realm. And this really is what sattvic yoga, sattvic Ayurveda is all about. And when I say yoga, I don't mean poses, I mean unity. So what would be on that other end of the spectrum? I wrote some down. For me, the ocean, the spray of water, watching a fire, falling asleep and feeling that subtle pleasure of right before you're about to fall asleep, or the subtle pleasure of right when you wake up. Looking at old growth trees, the smell of dirt. Lately, the feel of beautiful fabrics, or letting the soles of my feet feel the feeling of carpet. So pleasurable. I was at my mom's over the holidays and noticing the pleasure of letting my hand slide down the banister of her stairs, just feeling that soft wood sliding, like someone took the time to hone that wood. The tautness of a string or a dog leash. People love this feeling. There's a theory that we love the feeling of a taut string because it reminds us of holding the umbilical cord and the womb and feeling that life-giving cord. My goodness, what a subtle pleasure. So I want you to think of what the subtle ones are for you. And it's not that you have to give up all the overt ones, but to notice what they do to your body. Okay, here's what cheese pizza does to me. Here's what coffee does to me. And notice it is a different biochemical, neurological experience. Notice what birds chirping and the feeling of soft carpet on my feet. Like, what does that do to my body? And it's a generalization, but in general, things that swing strongly towards the overt pleasure end of the scale are going to be a little bit more activating or sympathetic, and things that lean a little bit more on the other end are going to be a little bit more parasympathetic or deactivating, more yin versus yang. Very interesting. How much time do we spend in the yin of our pleasure? Pleasure is always attempting to contact you. Right now, in this moment, no matter what's going on in your life, pleasure is always attempting to find you, to give you the good news. And I think it could be our saving grace in a world that sometimes feels that it has gone completely mad. So I want you to pause right now, and I'm noticing as I sit here and speak to you guys out through the ethers of this podcast, feeling the carpet, the rug actually beneath me, and the colors, the texture. If you're listening to this in the car, one of my favorite pleasures is the feeling of the steering wheel. Notice the little ridges, and how do you know you like things? How do you know something feels good? And just begin to notice that. My loves, pleasure is super important, and even more important, subtle pleasure. Subtle pleasure. So what are you going to do today to experience subtle pleasure? And as you go throughout your day, can you pause maybe every hour or so and just say, oh, like, what is pleasurable to me in this moment? Even if it's, oh my goodness, I'm at the office, there's nothing pleasurable. Yes, there is. It's everywhere. Pleasure is always attempting to contact us. On that note, it would be very pleasurable to see you in Ayurveda School. It's pretty much the last days to get in, you guys. We start, I'm not sure exactly when this podcast will go out, but we begin January 15th. There's a few spots left. If you are looking for a health coaching school that is all about pleasure, that is all about deep healing, that is all about exalting the divine feminine and masculine inside of you, if you're looking for a spiritual home that values heart and smarts, I think that we could be the place for you. And it may not be this year. It may be next year. We want it to be the right time for you, but we also want it to be the right fit. We're calling in the wise women of this planet, and I am so excited. I couldn't be more happy about the fact that we have women from, I think, every continent. I have to check with Amaury, but it's such an international crew, and that makes me feel so alive. I hope that you will join us for a year in self-discovery. As always, it's such a pleasure to be with you guys.
Put ফোটে ফুল আপন সুখে ফোটে ফুল